Hey guys, before this video starts, just a quick reminder to check out the merch that we have down below. If you're on mobile or on your desktop, if you just scroll down, you'll see the merch carousel down below. A lot of terrific merch, a lot of cool designs that I work very hard on. So please, if you want to check those out, if you want to get a shirt and support the show and help this show grow, then please check it out. Shirts are $19.99, which is an awesome low price. So please check it out. College sports is, in a way, a study on what makes an environment attractive to an athlete. In pro sports, an athlete's logic on where they want to play is boiled down to the widely accepted science. Big markets equal good, small markets equal bad. And in the NBA, that logic holds true as big name stars tend to sign with teams in big markets. In pro sports, where there seems to be an inherent imbalance when it comes to market size and concepts like free agency, things like the draft have to exist for a small market team to have a shot at a star player, because if you give a player a choice between New York, and Durham, North Carolina, well, then the choice is obvious. But ironically, the only time a player has that choice, they decide to go to Durham, North Carolina 100% of the time. When you look at college sports through a professional lens, it changes everything we think we know about players. For example, the big market argument many smaller market teams use to explain to their fans why they can't compete in a truly free market. On the surface, that argument makes a lot of sense. Even in sports like football and basketball that have hard caps, it does seem hard to land big names when your team is A, located in a location not deemed desirable, or B, in a market where they can't grow their brand. So if that is the case, then why, when that same star athlete has the choice to pick any college in the world in any market with no restrictions, do they overwhelmingly pick places like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Columbus, Ohio, Durham, North Carolina, and Lexington, Kentucky? Now, you may have the urge to say something about how universities located in the East Coast typically don't have the culture or prestige of college sports that surround bigger universities in smaller markets. And on some level, you would have an excellent point. But let's look at the nation's second largest market, Los Angeles. They are home to two of collegiate sports' most historic and prestigious programs, UCLA and USC. Both have the history, both have the large fan bases of a traditional collegiate power. But despite all of the advantages of being in a big market, being in a popular city, and being in a warm weather town, as player empowerment has gained steam in professional sports, seemingly pushing players to these exact situations, these programs still haven't found a way to attract star recruits away from Durham and Lexington, Kentucky. So at this point, I imagine that a lot of you took a look at the title of the video and say to yourself that this is exactly why we can't allow players to be paid in college sport. The money and the markets would imbalance the game and give an unfair advantage to large markets in the one environment that small markets thrive. But this is the point of the video where if you think that, you're probably gonna stop watching and comment something mean about my ponytail. Because allowing players, college athletes, to monetize their likeness would be the single best thing to ever happen to college sports, period. While the college athletic market is a great way to show how small markets don't have to get left behind when players have a free choice of where they will play, it's also an example of one of the most imbalanced markets in sports. In the 2017 McDonald's All-American game, 24 of the nation's best players participated. Of those 24, 7, which is roughly 30% of them, went to either Kentucky or Duke, programs that are ranked first and fourth in all-time wins. And the problem is no better in college football, as the University of Alabama, who has won at least 40% of this decade's national championships and has had, since the start of the decade, never had a recruiting class be ranked outside of the top 5. They have had the #1 ranked recruiting class 8 times since 2010 and have grabbed 40 5-star recruits in that time period. And yes, that dominance in talent acquisition has turned into results on the field, as Alabama has in the last 10 years posted an insane record of 127-13. Yes, 127 wins to 13 losses in a 10-year period. Alabama has a win percentage of over 90%, and the only coach who has been able to consistently keep up with Saban has been Urban Meyer, who has been responsible for getting a top 5 recruiting class 8 times in the last decade, which is impressive because he's kind of been inactive for at least 2 or 3 years of that time. And in his last decade of work from 2008 to 2018, Meyer had a record of 117-16. He won 86% of the games he coached in that time frame. These two coaches, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, have won 7 of the last 11 national championships. There is no balance or parity in college football. Anybody who tells you that is lying to your face. So any argument that college players being able to monetize themselves would throw off the balance of college football, or any college sport for that matter, is invalid. College football especially is inherently imbalanced. While other schools may be in bigger markets, markets are in large part irrelevant in college athletics. Winning programs have the most fans, get the most exposure, make the most money, and have the best facility. When you're Ohio State or Alabama and you have all that going for you, it's almost impossible for a school like Rutgers to reasonably compete. But those schools are left in a vicious cycle. They don't win, so they don't attract top recruits. They don't get the best players, so they don't win. They don't win, so they don't make money to build facilities to attract recruits or fans. But introducing another variable, like players being able to monetize their likeness, into that equation, and suddenly you give more schools a chance. And here's what I mean. Let's say if you're a 4-star recruit, right? And you're a quarterback. And instead of being the 3rd 5-star or 4-star QB on Georgia's roster, you have the chance to start right away at Houston or Rutgers. In the past, those options would have had very limited upside because you wouldn't be playing with top talent. And since you can't be marketed with today's NCAA rules, you would get limited exposure since your team is not one of the handful of dominant programs in college football. But suddenly, if that player is allowed to have an agent, allowed to have a team market him in a city like New York or Houston, then those situations become more attractive, and there are ultimately more good landing spots for good players. The talent is more evenly dispersed, there is more parity in college football, and if more teams are winning and the game has more stars, then there are more top flight facilities and money flowing at these programs. And all of this doesn't really even come at the expense of the top college football programs. Nick Saban will still be a hell of a recruiter. A guy like Tua Tagovailoa would be able to make a ton of money off the field despite being in Tuscaloosa, because in athletics today, winning still brings in more attention than being in a large market. And Alabama would still be able to win, but maybe instead of 45 stars, they do it with 20. And another added benefit this has for all programs is that it makes it more likely that you're going to be able to keep your star players longer. A lot of coaches make the habit of complaining to the media that too many players leave early without discussing the economic factors of why a player who is projected to be a late round pick would ultimately take that risk rather than coming back for another year of college. Some just don't have the luxury of going back to college and working on their game when they have serious financial issues that need to be addressed and there is money on the table. But if a player is able to make enough money off of his name, off of his likeness, to where he can be in a comfortable financial situation, then the decision becomes more about what's best for their playing career and not their pocket. And maybe they come back for that last chance at a national championship or that last year to really work on their craft as a player and not for their financial potential. Guys who are quite frankly better fits for their collegiate game than the professional one, like Tim Tebow and Jimmy Fredette, are able to make some of that money that everybody is making off of their backs. Maybe a guy like Destroying doesn't have to pick between his YouTube career and his college football career. And maybe he can use his popularity as a kicker, as a YouTube personality, to bring in more eyeballs to his football program. Maybe these two concepts could work together. I know it's a wild thought, but it's true. I know to a lot of people, the thought of monetization, agents, and brands ruin how they think of college sports. That college coaches don't want to deal with the burden of a player's management team. That inevitably some players will be screwed over by people with less than honest intentions. And maybe you're a diehard fan of one of these dominant teams and you don't want your team to lose out to a big market like your favorite pro team has. But college football is already dominated by the talks of TV markets whenever these conferences realign and create television stations. College football coaches make multi-million-dollar salaries. In some cases, they're the highest paid public official in their state. They are well compensated to deal with the added burden that players being monetized would create. And yes, some 18-year-olds will be making important, legally binding decisions and having to align themselves with a relative stranger who it's unclear if they have their best intention in mind. But at 18, they are already expected to make that kind of decision when they choose what school they go to. So if they are mature enough to make that decision, mature enough to be punished or dismissed from a school if they make a bad decision, then they are perfectly capable of handling decisions with financial consequences. Some will make bad choices, some will make great choices. And yes, maybe Alabama doesn't win 90% of their games. But looking at the amount of complaining about how much winning has made Alabama's fan base apathetic, then more parity has to be a good thing. Programs that are dominant now won't disappear overnight. But maybe this allows Miami to become the U again. Maybe it allows Rutgers to become more than a doormat to the Big Ten East. The only reason some people want more teams to qualify for the playoffs is because every year it's the same 6 to 8 universities who can compete for it. College football fans want something new, something fresh, something that is going to shake up the stale college football status quo. And the consequences of allowing players to monetize their likeness could be exactly what can save college football. All right, guys, that is it for this week's video. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you think players being able to monetize their likeness would be good for college football? It would probably bring back NCAA football, the video game, which would be awesome. But seriously, do you think this would be a good move for college football? Do you see that the consequences would create more parity by letting players have more landing spots that are attractive? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like what I did here, and if you like what I do here, then please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. Hey guys, real quick before this video starts, I do have merch. Yes, Worst Take has merch. We are selling shirts. I am here to give you a reminder that, hey, we have merch. We're selling shirts. Please buy them.